of lab of cloud computing and distributed systems. And in the first lesson, we started to talk about RMI versus RPC as two similar techniques for invoking remote code from a client program to a server program. Let me recap very quickly. The difference between RPC and RMI is straightforward because it comes from the name itself. RPC means remote procedure call, and RMI means remote method invocation. What is the difference? The difference is that RPC is older. It is a technique that was born in the 80s, and when there were no object-oriented languages around, almost, and it was meant for plain global function calls, like in C, for example, where you don't have objects, you only have plain functions. This is RPC. The most modern object-oriented version of RPC is called RMI, remote method invocation. Why? Because in object-oriented languages, you do not have plain global functions, but you have methods, and methods have classes and objects. So the most difficult part of dealing with the remote method invocation from a technical standpoint is that objects must be encoded somehow in order to make the server aware of which object we are invoking a certain method on. In the example we made the last time, it was we made a very simple example. I showed you a very simple example. The example consists in, I will redo it quickly. The example consists in a Java program that is split into two parts, the server part and the client part. The client and the server are two different programs actually. Each one consisting of one source code. So the Java, client.java source that we are looking at the moment is the source code for the, is there anybody asking? No. Seems not. Okay. The client program consists in this source code you are looking at in this moment. The server program consists in this source code that you're looking at in this moment. And there are two independent programs that can be run from the shell, and we also require another program to be running in order to make Java RMI working. I will show you again. And before starting the whole procedure of setting up the relevant shell instances for launching these commands, I want to tell you something more. First of all, the last time I used to show you that the string by which you bind the service on the registry, and using the same string you look up for the service from the client. These two strings, in the last week, I named them people with the random strings in order to let you know that any string would do. Alberto Veneri was asking me, is there any internal syntax that we can respect into these strings? Yes, there is. For example, you can do like this. For example, look at this string. You can use a URI somehow for saying that your server is in the local host, and the client assesses the same thing with the same string. If you put an IP address here, you can communicate with someone else. We will now try to make a test of truly remote communication with Alberto Veneri, that he told me this afternoon that he has set up on his computer a server, a Java RMI server, and he opened the relevant door in order for my client to communicate to him without hitting the firewall. And so we are also doing this improvement today. We are going to play with RMI between our computers. If someone else wants to play with us, he can set up his environment on his machine. Now, Alberto, if you want to say something, you are welcome, of course. Okay, so
yeah, good morning, everybody. Yeah, I just write to you that I have tried the exercise that we have seen the previous lesson.
The very same exercise. I mean, do you have a square root server basically on your machine?
Yeah, I have a square root server.
The same code, basically. The same code.
Yeah.
Okay. Then let me set up my shell environment, and then we can have a try.
Okay.
So for everyone, if you wanna do what I'm doing on your computer, you can follow my steps. I'm not talking to Alberto because you already did that, but I'm talking to the others. Now I will set up two shells, one running the server and one running the client, in order to make them communicate. Why am I using two shells? Just to simulate two environments. Basically, I am making my computer communicate with itself, because both the server and the client are on my computer at the moment, but then we will show with Alberto a further example. Let me set up the shells. Okay, so I need to go to the path is here. Lambda cloud, RMI test, source. Here we go. This is the path of the source code. Okay. Here's another shell. So we have two. Okay. Now, I compile all the Java files, done. And in this shell, the left shell, we are putting the server. On the right shell, we are putting the client. On the left shell, before starting the server, we must start the RMI registry. As you might remember, it stays in background, and it is another process behaving like a daemon. Now we launch the server. Okay, the server is up, and it has built subclass of the server class. The last time we got to this point of the lesson where I was talking to you about subtyping and inheritance, that is fully supported by RMI. On this side, I am now writing on the right shell. I'm gonna launch the client. The client is a Java program that requires one argument in command line, I already told you, and the argument is a number which is sent to the server. The server calculates the square root and replies back to the client. For example, 36.0. And look at the result, minus 6.0. Why minus? Because we have overridden the behavior of the default method for calculating the square root on the server side with a subclass that overrides the calculate square root method with a method that performs the negative calculation. It is just another calculation. We could have written anything here. It is just to show you how you can specialize, how you can customize the behavior of your server by inheritance, which is a strong feature of object orientation. When you write true real-world object-oriented programs, you often use inheritance, subclasses, and overriding for customizing behavior of objects and their methods. And RMI, as I show you, RMI fully supports this. It supports polymorphism, it supports subtyping, it supports dynamic dispatching on the server side, etc. So that this is the reason why it is invocating this version with a minus instead of the original version. If here I change my server code and I instantiate a server class in place of a neg server class, which is the subclass, then with the very same code, I'm not changing one single line except the construction of the object. With the very same code, I get different results. I show you. Of course, I need to recompile them. I need to recompile the server, because I modified the source code. That's why. Okay, look at the server log. It is different. Before, it used to say constructor server, constructor neg server, server up. Now it only writes constructor server and server up. Why? Because we are constructing the superclass. Before we were constructing the subclass, and when you construct the subclass, if the constructors prints something in the standard output, it is printed before the execution of the super constructor, and so you first see. Actually depends on when you call super. Look. The superclass prints this in the standard output, and the subclass prints this in the standard output. So every constructor prints his own name, and according to the order we see you see here where I highlight it, according to the order that we observe in the shell, we see that Java first executed the super and then the subclass. It is normal because when you call the constructor of the subclass below, it first goes up, executes the constructor of the super class, and then it goes back down and executes its own subclass constructor. It is normal. If we had 5 classes in hierarchy, A, B, C, D, E, 5 classes, and we call the constructor of the last one, of the most downward one, then the execution is going up, then down, 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 until it goes back. Because if you try to think about that, it is normal. This behavior of Java is normal because and it is correct, because when you initialize a subclass, you first need to initialize the superclass. So it is okay to invoke the superconstructors before the subconstructors. And now that we launched the server in the normal version, that is not the neg server subclass, but we instantiated directly the plain server superclass, now you will see that the behavior of the client is different. It prints 6.0 without the minus, because it is invocating the superclass method. Of course, this works for every number. I can write anything, and it calculates the square root. Okay, now let's play for a few minutes with the URI that you can express within the name for binding your service and for looking at the service from the client. I want to stress out this once more. The string you're using when you bind the service, must be the very same string you use on the client source for looking up the service. So it is actually a good practice, and this is just a programming practice. It is a good programming practice to not replicate this string, because when it is complex, you might introduce typos. You might write it wrong, and the compiler doesn't know anything about that. So if I write here like this, localhost my server without the E, and I register it with the correct name, then the two will not find each one other, because the name is different, of course. And so the good programming practice is to put a constant at the language level, and to bind the constant to the name, and to use the constant from the two sources. In this way, you have only one place for writing the string constant, and should you introduce a typo when referencing it, you will get a compiler error, because you are mentioning wrong variable names. This is a very basic programming practice that almost the programmer never uses. That is to bind strings to constant names in order to have variable identifiers in the code and not string constants. I show you. For example, where is a good place to put such a constant? Given that we are talking about two different sources for two different programs, the client and the server, then we should put the constant in a common source file. I mean, a source file that both of them uses, because the server application might not use some source files of the client application. They might be, in theory, they might be two totally independent programs, in theory. So we must find a common spot between the two. That is a source file that both use. And what is the source file that both use? The file defining the interface of the RMI. We have one file defining the interface for the communication, and it is the file that you are looking at in this very moment in my screen. And in this file, you define a Java interface that must extend the remote interface, which is given by the, it is important here, the remote interface is defined by the Java library. And inside this interface, you put all the methods that you need to share between the two applications, between the client and the server. In our example, we only had one function to share. That is the function for calculating the square root. Here, we might add other functions, but we may also add constants, not only functions. For example, are you following me, guys? Here from you. I don't remember if I have to put static inside the spaces. Yes, I have to. Okay. Look, I just defined a string constant whose name is name, and its value is the URI. Final means it is constant, almost. It's not really, but if you know Java, you know what final does. And static means that it is not a field of the objects implementing the interface, but it is just a static field. And then on the server side, I can, in place of this string constant directly in the code, I can just refer to the variable. Name of the class. No, sorry, what was the name of the class again? Square root, right? Yeah. Oh, I need to put a package, probably. Let me No, it's already referenced. And let me compile the server.
Yes, sorry, the problem with the auto-completion, of the IDE is that in the project.
It doesn't work because it is not a project, actually. They are just. Yes, I know. I had a moment that I was thinking, my God, why is it not working? Then I remembered that it is actually not a project for IntelliJ. It is just 3 files opened with IntelliJ. Just that. So let me, okay, and let me launch the server. Server is up. Now I go to the client part and I replace the string literal with the same reference. Going to the client, file the client, launching. Here you go. Oh my. Okay. Don't ask me why the square root of 4.2 is a negative number. I don't know. I don't know.
It's not a minus. It was in the background.
No, you are right. I'm so I'm blind. Sorry. It was so well put in my display that I'm sorry. I'm becoming old, and my sight is not as performing as before. Sorry. You're right. Okay, so this identifier technique is very precious. It is very simple, and you probably understood it very well, but it is very precious because if here I write, for example, the wrong name, for example, this, I write the wrong name, simply the compiler will tell me an error. So it is different from having a string literal replicated twice. We only modify the string once. That is here. Okay, now let's try to communicate with Alberto's server. So in order to communicate with Alberto's server, I need to replace this with a different string only for the client because I am communicating with a server that is not my own. And so let me do it dirty and quick. Alberto, I'm picking up your IP address, and so this is your IP address. Probably I can do like this. What was the port number? Okay. And what is the name of the server, Alberto? Alberto?
Yeah, sorry. The name of the server is actually we don't. I see that we don't need.
Okay, we try like this only just on
No,
with the port.
I have just replaced it. Sorry, is a SQRT. SQRT.
Sorry, in minuscule, capital or not?
Not capital.
Like this?
Yes, has the math function that you have.
Okay.
Math library.
Okay. I'm not sure if I have to specify the port number. Let's try. We try. Okay. Okay. So, in principle, I do not need to recompile the server. No, I will do even more. I stop my server. I will stop my server. Why doesn't it stop? Perhaps control D. Okay. Okay. So my server is off, is not up. I recompile the Java client and I'm just launching the client directly. Okay, RMI not bound exception, ask QRT, look up. But well, basically, I would say that it is an error because he didn't find the server. Let me try without the IP port. Well, it exploded anyway. Connection refused. So the program tried to go outside my network because it says connection refused to host 192.1.1.2. Next exception is connect exception. I can't connect. There might be two problems, Alberto. Either my network doesn't allow me to create outgoing connections on the port 1099, and so it's a problem of my outgoing firewall, or it is your configuration that is still protected by something somehow. Let me ping you, okay? But are you there?
Yeah, I haven't tried with directly with the naming function, but if you try with
I am pinging you.
If you try with the code that I have sent in the chat, I think it's gonna work.
If you try with what? Sorry.
The 2 lines of code that I've sent in the chat.
That is, sorry, which one? What chat? This
Sorry.
chat, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, you're using the registry technique. Okay, I am afraid that you are right because listen to my theory. If I don't specify in the code, I mean, the name of the registry where the service is registered, my client cannot know that your machine holds the service. So
I think so. I think
it is reasonable. So I must introduce a line in the code of the client and create a registry object, and instead of using the naming class, I use the registry class and its lookup method. Let me try this way. No, I have an error. Let me try to understand. I must import probably registry. Do you know where registry has to be imported? Locate registry. It is Java probably. Java RMI. Asterisco probably. Let's try this way.
I sent it in the chat if you want.
Yes, thank you. Because since I don't have auto completion, I need to look it by myself.
But if you want the source code, I can send you on the
No,
chat.
it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. 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 Let me try this way. I also need the registry, probably the registry type, but probably like this is okay. No. Okay, there's an exception. Malformed URL exception is never thrown. Okay. Okay. Because it was thrown only by the previous code, probably, and not this. Okay, now we have no errors. So I start the client. Connection refused. I'm afraid. Oh, perhaps I just needed to look up the plain name when I use the explicit get registry, probably.
Yes, I think so.
I think so because Let me retry. We always have the same error, so it is probably an error on my part, I guess, because it says connect exception. Weird. I don't know what to say. The connection refused. Do you get any log or anything? I mean, from your side, do you get anything? Do you see anything in the log of the server? Do you get any log line?
No, I don't get anything. Locally, it seems to work using also the public IP.
Yes. So if you use your own IP in the code, you access it anyway, you mean?
Yeah. Yes, but using the public IP, not the local host, of course.
Oh, yes.
But I don't know if it with if knows that it knows that it corresponds to the public IP. I mean, it translated directly in localhost, so we don't have this error.
I don't know. I don't know. This is hard to know. This is a matter of experience, you know. Let me try some other way. Wait a second. And let me kill my registry. My registry is down now. I don't want my registry to perhaps conflict or something. Registry, what is this? It's not mine. Probably this process is not mine. Okay. I believe it is a outgoing firewall connection. I believe so, because you know when you see connection refused, it is and look, connection refused to host 192.168.1.2. And what is this host? Let me see in my router what is the name of my computer, what is the IP of my computer. If I want to see if my computer has that IP. Let me. No. My global.
Okay, yeah, so probably it's my bad. I don't know. I tried, but
yes, it is not so easy to make it work, because you know when there are real distributed applications, there is always a system administrator. You know, there is always someone that configures the network. It is always not easy actually to make things work with internet in the middle. If we were in a LAN, probably that would go, probably that would do, but in internet, you know, there are several protection layers, there are antiviruses, there are probably even the providers do not let the traffic on where the port numbers to go for security reasons. I'm not even sure that port number 1099 is free to access to, both incoming and outgoing. So let's not insist with this, and let us just go on with our lesson. So basically, what we learned, even if the experiment didn't work, doesn't matter. What we learned is that if you want to communicate with a truly distributed application, where parts of the application are running on different computers with different IP addresses, then you have to write the client code in a slightly different way, very slightly. It is just a one line of difference. The point is that you have to create the registry object by specifying the IP and the port of the remote machine, instead of just using a long URI. And this method is a commodity method for getting the registry object, given an IP, string, and a port. And then you get the registry object of type registry, and then you use the lookup method on the registry instead of on the global static class naming. Let me try like this, if it works here. Does it have an overridden version, perhaps? Let me try. And the server name is just localhost. Okay. Okay, start again my RMI registry, and then no, next unknown host, localhost. So I cannot use the same technique with the localhost string. Let's see if it works like this. No, you need to use this very same name, basically. So if you are using it in a local environment with distributed processes, not distributed computers, only distributed processes, then you have to use the technique with the same string. Otherwise, the registry technique. Well, this is actually not very relevant from our lesson. What is more important for us is another topic, the topic of serialization. Serialization is the technique for converting objects into something that can be sent through a socket or through a channel in general. So basically, when you have to communicate from a server to a client or vice versa, you need to serialize the data going through the channel, because sockets and connections in general are byte streams. Basically, they communicate through characters, so they are very low level data format. If you want to communicate, for example, a double value like we did in our example, the system has to serialize the double and send it to the channel, and the server has to deserialize the double. So with basic built-in types, this is very easy, because serializing integers, doubles, booleans, strings, and stuff like this, it is very easy. The serialization is straightforward. But when you have to communicate through objects that are classes that you wrote in your program, then the thing is different. Let me show you. Okay, so for simplicity, I go back to the original version, so we have no disturbances for wait of the exception again? Malformed URL. Malformed URL exception. Okay, let me now. Okay, it works. Okay, so imagine that I add another method to my interface. What does it mean? Imagine that we want to share another function, not only the calculate square root, but something else, another function. But this function has an argument whose type is a type I made. Let's make an example. Imagine we define, let me add a new class. Person.java. I am creating a new public class person. A person is a very straightforward example. Everybody can understand that. Has some static private fields. For example, a person has a name. A person has a surname. And a person has an age. And also a person has an address. Okay? It's just a very simple example. When you create a person, you need to specify the name, surname, the address, and the age. And the constructor simply populates the internal fields. Are you following me? Now we define some getters. Just making an example of a custom data type that you might need to communicate to a server. And a real-world example might have many getters and even setters.
I think there is a typo in the constructor.
What?
I think there is a typo in the constructor.
Perhaps yes, because I have no completion.
Name.
Yes. See, yes. Grazie. Okay. And okay, so this is very easy, to understand. Well, in our interface, I will not change the name of the interface. The name of the interface is square root because we provided a function for calculating the square root. Now, since I don't have auto completion, etc., I don't want to rename every occurrence of the interface, but we could literally give any name to the interface. I just leave it like it is, and I add another function. For example, this function. A function get person age that, given a person, retrieves the age. Clear? It is a very simple example, and we want to share this function through the RMI system. So, how are we going to do? We go to the server side, and we need to implement, obviously, the new method. So I give an implementation for the new method. Given a person P, I return P dot get age, and the return type is an int. I'm not gonna override it with a different behavior in the subclass. We will play with the overriding later. Let's just make it work in the plain version. On the client side, after calculating the square root, I want to do this. I create a person, and the age of Pippo Baudo, I don't know, it would be 18, yes. So now I want to call square server dot what was the name, get person age, and I pass P. I expect a result of type integer, and I print it. I expect this. Okay. So let's go to the shells and let's compile both the servers and the clients. Both have compiled successfully. I'm truly astonished. Okay. Remote object implements illegal remote interface. Next exception is illegal. Okay, let me see what happened, because I should perhaps create a true project for IntelliJ, because I'm starting to have problems to and the code without the IDE. Let me understand what's happening. Weird. Wait. Perhaps I just need to. I wanted to show you the difference between putting implements. So the basic point I wanted to show you is that in order to make it communicate, is that you need to put this in the definition of the class. In this way, the object will be serializable. This tells the Java compiler to create serializers that can later be used, but I'm not sure that this is the very error that we are having. Serializable, sorry. Let me create a project, guys. Let me create a project. Perhaps a project from existing source I want to try. No, run test. Source. Okay. Correct. Okay. Now, why can't I add the class? I don't understand. Sorry. Wait a second. Be patient, please.
Alvise, if you want an end, if you go to the previous project and you try to change the project structure, you're gonna have whatever you want. So file.
Yes. Project structure. Yeah.
Project structure.
Yes.
Go to modules.
Modules.
Put select source.
Select
Source.
where?
SRC source, right?
I select. Okay.
No, you have to mark as sources.
I didn't know this technique. Okay.
And then you have also to go to project another time on the project settings on the left.
Yes.
And specify the project compiler output on the last space.
For example, the same directory.
The same directory, the output.
For example, like this. I don't know if the dot works. Perhaps not. Boo. Who knows?
I really don't know. I have the complete path in my PC.
Yeah, better if I put the path because it is not accepting it. Let me choose my path. So it is like users, documents, GitHub. Because everything is in the GitHub repository, that this makes things even more complicated. I could put the output here in the out directory. Let's see if it works. Person. Okay. Okay. And now let me clean up. Let me clean up the things I created. So I remove classes file from here. I keep only sources, and within here there must be. Okay, let me build. Okay, should have built. Okay, where? Here. Fantastic. Now all the relevant output bytecode classes are here. So with my shells, I have to go there. So it is like this. Production. My test. Perfect. So it is out production. Okay. Okay. Now, since it has built, probably it means that I can launch it. No, it doesn't start. Let me try to understand why. What am I missing? And these two are irrelevant. Now that IntelliJ does its job, it shows me what is uses needed and not. No, because it's not here, sorry. Better if I compile. Okay, Java Mutual Override implement, correct. This is correct. Okay, get person age doesn't exist, of course. Of course. Okay, the build is done. Let me see the, yes, the time is good. So it's just this minute. The server is now up and the client works. Okay, so I need just to add, let me add a different method instead of this method, just dealing with, for example, okay. Now it should tell me that there is no implementation, exactly. You see me? Okay. Okay, now let me see if it starts. No. Il lega not method encounter. It didn't. I'm truly astonished. What's the problem here? Be patient, guys, because I'm not understanding. Excuse me, how what do you mean? Does it mean I can only have one method? It doesn't make any sense. Okay, now. How can this be? Exception is. One million account because it's quite it has export object remove method account. Let me try to have a look in internet. I tried this experiment this morning before showing to you, and it worked. I'm missing something that I'm not understanding. Excuse me. This is a wrong post. Fantastic. This is in Chinese. Fantastic. I don't really know. I can someone else try on his computer, for example, Alberto, to add a method? Just add a method to the interface and see what happens. If you compile, just add a method, any method, even method that does nothing, like the method I wrote. I mean, I'm not understanding why I have this error at the moment. I'm wondering if it's something that has to do with my configuration and not the code. Remote exception. Ah, that's why the signature was wrong and the compiler didn't tell me anything. All the methods that you have must throw remote exception. must have to. The exception message is quite cryptic, but the point is that the signature of the exported method in the interface does not meet the requirements for the signatures for exported methods. Basically, any function that you export must also throw remote exceptions. If you don't specify that, I forgot about that. If you don't specify that, you get a runtime error. It is not a compile time error. It is something that the registry understands, but the error message is very cryptic. Let me clean up the code now. Okay. Hola. Sorry, guys, I forgot. Was a little detail that I was missing. Okay. Now let's. Oh, look. I don't know if you see that, but it wrote the result of the square root and age equal 80. What is 80? 80 is this number. Of course, it is a stupid algorithm. It does nothing, but it retrieves the field of the object and returns it back. So when I call get person age and I pass p as argument, it means I am passing an object. I'm not passing an integer or a double or a basic type. I'm passing an object. And so this object is made like this. It has 4 fields inside, 1 constructor and 4 methods, and it must be serialized through the channel in such a way that it can be reconstructed on the other side with respect to this class signature. So the name, surname, address, and the age, these 4 data fields must be serialized somehow. Let's see what happens if I remove this from the code. It compiles anyway, and we now run it again and see if it works or not. It doesn't. You see? Look very carefully. I am calling client with 36.0 as argument, and it responds. It replies to me 6.0. So it is not the client not working. It actually works until here, and actually it works even here. But what doesn't work is this invocation. If I put a print here, foo, look, I'm sorry. Look at it says foo, so it means that it reached this point. So it is not a problem of constructing the object. It is not a problem of constructing it. It is only a problem of communicating it to the server. It is interesting to make this consideration. If I am a programmer and I forget 2 things, either to put the throws remote exception on the signature of the methods inside the shared interface, or I forget to put implements serializable in the class signature of the data types I'm gonna use for the communication. In either cases, I get no compiler errors. Did you notice that I lost 10 minutes for understanding that I was missing a signature, a close signature here, a few minutes before. And did you notice that when I removed the implement serializable, the compiler didn't tell me a word, and the client just didn't work at runtime? So this is what we are, what we truly have. We have a technology that works until you respect its rail somehow. Whenever you forget something, we don't have tools or compilers or any development tool that tells us that we are forgetting something. Now let me show you something more interesting. Let's add another interesting method. We create a make older method that picks a person and increases its age by 1. Okay? Oh, well, not even. It takes a person and it increases its age by a specified amount. Okay? So let's go to the server side. Naturally, we now have a compile time error because we are missing one method. We implement it. Make older. It takes a person P and an amount, and what it does is P dot. We need a setter. Let me make a setter because otherwise I can't modify the fields. Let me make 4 setters. Oof. Okay, I made 4 setters, very easy. The reason why I made the setters is because I created private fields. If I had created public fields, we wouldn't have this complication of having getters and setters. But usually this is the way of programming through Java Beans, if you know what it is. So it is not so wrong to do this. It is only a little bit more complicated. Then on the server side, we just do this P set age with P get age plus amount, right? And this is what this method does. It modifies the argument given another argument. Let's see what happens in the client side. I replicate some code, and using the very same person object, I say, okay, I don't like this name anymore. I just write it. I just call it yes. And I also don't like this name anymore. I just call it, instead of the square root, I call it, no, let's keep it like this. Let's keep it like this. Change it later. Okay. I just want to do this. Server dot make older P of 10 years. So we make Pippo Baudo increasing its age from 80 to 90. And what I'm gonna do now later is that I wanna print the person again. we print P. For printing P, I go to the person object and I override the toString in order to make it printable, and we return a name. Yes. Address. Name, surname, address, age. Here we go. And I just made a quick printer. Okay, now let's compile this. Okay, compiled. Let's run the server back again. Server is up. Run the client. Okay, so you see, the first result is the square root, the second result is the age of the object, and the third line is the printer. And it writes name Pippo, name Baudo, address Via Colvento, age 80, not 90. It's not writing 90. Why, in your opinion? Let's see if some one of you has a theory on this. What would you say?
Because it is only changed in the server side.
Exactly. It is very easy, no? I hope that everybody understands that. When you modify a field in an object, you are modifying it in the server, not in the client, because the client creates the object, then it sends it to the server. When sending, it serializes the object into a string form. The server parses this string, creates the object in its own memory, it performs the operation into its environment, into its memory. The operation modifies the memory into the server memory. And then there is no one giving the result back to the client. No, the client still has the original object. So when we are in presence of side effects, that is in presence of code that modifies the state of objects, then RMI is problematic because it doesn't reflect the semantics of the program. You expect that calling a certain method would have some outcome, and in fact it doesn't. So how do we have to behave as a programmers in this case? Well, we have to program avoiding side effects. What does it mean? It means that you don't have to modify your data, and even if you do, you always have to return the new modified data as if it was new. Let me show you. This make older function picks a person and the amount to be increased on the age field. It modifies the argument, so we need to return a person in order to make the client get as a result the modified object. The modified object can either be the same object or a new object. It is irrelevant. Let me go into the details of this. Let's go into the server implementation and change the signature. And look now, we have to return an object here. And what object do we return? The same that we got as argument. So we get our object, we modify it, and we return it. We don't even need to create a new person object with the modified fields. Because when we return the object, even if it's the same with that we just modified one field, when returning, the serialization occurs on the channel again, from the server to the client, because it's returning a result. And the serialization means that the object is serialized. And then the client reconstructs the object from scratch. So it is as if we created a new one. So we have two approaches here. This approach or another approach, that is creating a new person with the same name as the original, the same surname, sorry, I need to use the gappers, the same surname, the same address, and the age of the original plus the amount. So we have two possible variants. Okay, and then here we can either return P or P2 according to what we prefer. Naturally, this has not to be done if we use P2. And so, well, let's do like this. Let's click P, and we either have to comment one or the other. Let's try with this version. That is the version that sides affect the person. Let's go to the client, and the client receives a result here, person P. Well, let's just reassign it and print it. So server is up. Look, age 90. Age 90. And let's test the other alternative version, that is creating a new person and returning it. Well, actually, we don't even need a name. Clean it up. Okay. It works in both ways, and of course, the reason is obvious. What is not obvious is that when you program, you must remember that whenever you make side effects, you cannot truly make them on the server side. So you must translate all your algorithms, functions, and code that deals with side effects in such a way that after having done the side effects, it must return at least the very same side affected object. Okay, so we have just a few minutes before ending this second lesson. And in these minutes, I want to hear from you what you, some comments and questions. We use the last minutes for questions. Please, thank you. Any question? Are you still there, guys? Hope so.
No questions at the moment.
No questions, seems so. Was everything clear? I mean, did you understand quite? Let me recap. Let me recap a little. It is not so important that you learn how Java RMI works, because perhaps you will never have to write a program using Java RMI. It is most common today to use RESTful APIs for doing similar things. But I will warn you that it is not the same thing. We will talk about RESTful APIs tomorrow, but RMI is a different thing. RMI means to write programs that call functions and methods that seem to be on the local machine, but are actually run remotely. And this is as transparent as possible. Is it fully transparent 100%? No, it isn't. It has a little cost. You have to define a common interface with the function that you want to share. You have to define, you have to register the service on a registry. You have to connect the client. Okay, these are a few quirks that you have to do, but other than this, the rest of your code is perfectly normal, except for side effects. This is RMI. This is a programming calling remote objects and remote function. RESTful is another story. RESTful is a programming the web. It is only web, not in general with applications, and it requires stateless entities to take place. So it is very different from RMI. We will go into the details of RESTful, but for now, I'm interested in making you understand RMI not as a programmer, but for the logic. The logic is that you have a client, you have a server, they are two programs, and they have to communicate. In order to communicate, they must serialize data. If they serialize data, there is a number of implications. The first implication is that the data is copied, because when you serialize, you copy. You basically copy. You convert it to strings, and then the other end parses it back and reconstructs the data structure. So you always work on copies. You never work on pointers because it's on another machine. And this is the first impactful thing of working with RPC or RMI. So I'm not interested in making you understand RMI in Java, literally, but I want you to understand the implications of working with the remote calls, whether they are procedures, functions, methods, or whatever. When you have objects, you have even more complications because you also have subtyping working on the other side. When you only have plain functions, you don't have the complication of objects, but you anyway have the complication of replicating the data, and you can't perform side effects unless you return the modified data structure as a result of your functions. So there are implications that are very important for understand for a computer scientist. This is a master degree course, and a computer scientist that has graduated in a master degree must know this. You can't know Java, for example, very well, but it doesn't matter. You must know that communicating between two computers is complicated, and this is something that I want you to understand in this course, if not the details. Is there any other question? Otherwise, I shut down. Let's wait a few seconds. If there are no questions, I simply say goodbye to you and see you tomorrow afternoon, same time, 5:30. Thank you for having been here, and see you tomorrow. Goodbye, guys. Goodbye.